coffee shop on 5th Street had that particular smell of burnt espresso and broken dreams. I sat in the corner booth, the same one where 5 years ago my brother David had laughed at my business plan. The same booth where he'd slid my folder back across the scratched wooden table with that smirk I knew too well from childhood. Software for small restaurants? He'd said, shaking his head like I was still the kid who couldn't figure out long division. Tommy, you've always been the dreamer. But this is just sad. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The memory still tasted bitter, like coffee left too long on the burner. I remembered how his fingers had drummed against the table, that nervous habit he'd never outgrown. How his voice carried just loud enough for the barista to glance over with pity in her eyes. Look, he'd continued, leaning forward with that patronizing tone he'd perfected in business school. I get it. You want to be the successful one for once. But restaurant management software? There's already a dozen companies doing this. You'd get crushed. I tried to explain the difference. How my system wasn't just about inventory or scheduling. It was about understanding the soul of a small restaurant, the way Maria counted her tomatoes by hand every morning, the way old Pete knew his regulars' orders before they sat down. My software would learn these patterns, these human touches that the big companies missed. But David had already checked out. His phone buzzed and he glanced at it, then at his Rolex, then everywhere except my face. Tommy, he'd said, standing and straightening his tie, you've always been the dumb one in the family. That's not mean, it's just fact. Stick to what you know. Stick to fixing computers. The coffee shop hadn't changed much in 5 years. Same chipped mugs, same jazz music that never quite matched the mood. But everything else had changed. Everything. I pulled out my phone and opened the Forbes article I'd bookmarked. The headline still made me smile. Restaurant Mind, the AI revolution that's saving small eateries. Below it, a photo of David in his best suit, arms crossed, that same smirk now labeled as visionary confidence. The article was 3 months old, but I'd read it dozens of times. How David Mitchell had revolutionized the restaurant industry with his innovative software. How his company, Techdyne Solutions, was valued at $42 million. How he'd started with just a simple idea and years of dedicated research. Years of dedicated research. That was rich. I remembered the day I'd found out. Not from David, of course. Not from any family member who might have thought to mention that my baby brother had suddenly become a tech mogul. I discovered it the way you discover most betrayals in the modern age, through a LinkedIn notification that felt like a punch to the gut. David Mitchell, CEO of Techdyne Solutions, celebrates Series B funding round. The accompanying photo showed him cutting a ribbon outside a gleaming office building. Behind him stood a team of developers, all smiling like they'd built something together. I say, something meaningful. Something mine. I'd clicked through to his company website with trembling fingers. The product description was almost word for word from my original proposal. The features I'd outlined, the market analysis I'd spent months researching, even the color scheme I'd chosen for the interface mockups, but it was the About Our Founder section that really twisted the knife. David's biography painted him as a restaurant industry insider who had spent years observing the unique challenges faced by family-owned establishments. It mentioned his deep research into the personal relationships between restaurant owners and their customers, and his innovative approach to human-centered design. Human-centered design. I'd use those exact words in my presentation. The barista was different now. A young man with gauges and a philosophy degree he probably wished he could return. He wiped down tables with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd given up on bigger dreams. I wondered if he had a brother too. Someone who'd look at his art or his writing and pat his head condescendingly before stealing it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Tommy, it's David. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long moment. 5 years of silence, and now he wanted to talk. I set the phone face down on the table and watched the steam rise from my coffee. Some conversations were worth waiting for. Some revenge was worth savoring. The first year after I discovered David's betrayal had been the hardest. Not just because of the financial loss, though watching someone else build a $40 million company with your idea certainly stung. It was the isolation. The way our parents talked about David's sudden success at family dinners while I sat there swallowing glass. The way my sister forwarded me articles about his achievements with little heart emojis, oblivious to the fact that she was celebrating my own grave. But anger, I'd learned, could be a remarkably effective fuel when properly refined. I'd started small. A freelance gig here, a consulting contract there. I'd built websites for local businesses, fixed their computer problems, charged fair rates, and delivered good work. Nothing glamorous, but honest. Clean. The breakthrough came when I was working on a system for Chen's Kitchen, a tiny Chinese place that had been struggling with inventory management. Mrs. Chen spoke broken English, but she understood her business better than any MBA. She knew that Thursday lunch crowds ordered more lo mein, that rainy days meant more soup, that the couple at table 4 always split the kung pao chicken, but ordered separate rice. Computer not know this, she told me, pointing at the screen where I was inputting data. Computer not have heart. That's when it hit me. David had stolen my idea, but he'd built it wrong. His software was sophisticated, elegant, expensive. It could track inventory to the penny and optimize staff schedules to the minute. But it couldn't learn that Mrs. Chen always made extra egg rolls on Fridays, because that's when the construction crew came in. Or that she needed to order more tissues during flu season because her regulars trusted her chicken soup more than medicine. I started over, not with grand plans or investor meetings or presentations in coffee shops. I started with Mrs. Chen and a different question. What if the software learned to care? The system I built for her was uglier than David's. The interface looked like something from 2010, and it couldn't generate the kind of sleek reports that impressed venture capitalists, but it worked. It learned. It noticed that certain customers always ordered extra sauce, that busy nights needed different prep schedules, that the old man who came in every Tuesday had started ordering smaller portions and might need a gentle check-in. Mrs. Chen's food costs dropped by 30% in the first month. Her waste was cut in half. More importantly, her customers started staying longer, coming more often, bringing friends. The software hadn't just optimized her business, it had helped her remember why she'd opened a restaurant in the first place. Word spread the way good news spreads in small business communities slowly, quietly, through conversations over shared problems and borrowed salt. I didn't advertise. I didn't pitch. I just solved problems for people who needed solving, one kitchen at a time. My phone buzzed again. Another text from David. I know you're probably angry. Can we meet? It's important. I almost laughed. Angry was such a small word for what I'd felt. Fury had given way to determination. Determination to strategy. Strategy to something much more dangerous, patience. By year 3, I was running what you might generously call a business. Restaurant Heart wasn't incorporated, didn't have investors, didn't have a marketing budget or a mission statement, or any of the things David's company press releases love to mention. It was just me, a laptop, and a growing network of small restaurant owners who trusted me with their most important asset, their relationship with their customers. I charged a fraction of what David's company charged. My software looked like it was built by someone who cared more about function than form, because it was. But it worked. Better than that, it worked with love. It learned not just what people ordered, but who they were. It reminded owners about birthdays and anniversaries, tracked dietary restrictions and preferences, even noted when someone seemed quieter than usual and might need an extra smile. The big revelation came during year 4. I was installing an update at Rosario's, a family-owned Italian place that had been struggling since the pandemic. Mr. Rosario was showing me how the system had helped him remember that the young woman at table 7 always ordered gluten-free pasta on Wednesdays because it was her daughter's favorite, and how knowing that had helped him suggest new dishes she might enjoy. Your brother, Mr. Rosario said suddenly. He came by last month. My hands froze on the keyboard. My brother? David Mitchell from Techdyne. He wanted to sell us his software. Mr. Rosario's weathered face creased into a frown. I told him we already had a system. He said his was better, more professional. Showed me these fancy charts, graphs, analytics. I kept my voice steady. What did you tell him? I told him his software might be smarter, but it doesn't have a heart. I told him about how your system remembered my wife's birthday last year and suggested we put her favorite flowers on the tables that day. She cried, you know. Good tears. His computer would never think to do that. Mr. Rosario paused, then looked at me with the kind of curiosity that comes from putting puzzle pieces together. He said something strange when he was leaving. Said he didn't know his brother was in the business. I didn't connect it at first, but then I remembered your last name. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in on a secret I'd been keeping without realizing it. Did you tell him about the system? About what it does? Mr. Rosario shook his head. I figured if you wanted him to know, you would have told him yourself. Family business is family business. But I could see in his eyes he was worried about something. He kept asking questions about the software, about the other restaurants using it. Like he was scared. Scared. The word sat between us like a confession neither of us was ready to make. That night, I did something I'd been avoiding for 4 years. I researched Techdyne Solutions properly. Not the glowing press coverage or the investor announcements, but the real numbers. The customer reviews, the support forums, the quiet complaints from restaurant owners who'd signed expensive contracts and gotten software that worked perfectly and felt like nothing. Techdyne's growth had stalled. Their customer retention rates were dropping. In the review sections, the same complaints appeared over and over. Too complicated. Doesn't understand our business. My customers feel like numbers. Missing the human touch. Meanwhile, Restaurant Heart had grown to over 300 clients. All small businesses, all paying modest monthly fees, all staying because the software felt like part of their family. I'd never calculated the total revenue because it wasn't about the money. But that night, for the first time, I did the math. 300 clients, $50 per month average. 12 months, $180,000 annually, almost all profit since my only real costs were server hosting and my own time. It wasn't $42 million, but it was honest money. Sustainable money. Money that came from solving real problems for real people who trusted me with their dreams. More importantly, it was growing. Every month, new restaurants. Every month, testimonials that made my chest tight with pride. Stories about how the software had helped a struggling diner remember why their customers loved them, or how it had spotted patterns that prevented food poisoning, or simply how it had made the difference between barely surviving and actually thriving. David's company, for all its funding and press coverage, was shrinking. The revolution he'd promised was turning into a disappointment, one canceled subscription at a time. My phone buzzed again. This time, a phone call. David. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Not out of spite, but because some moments deserve to be stretched, like taffy in the hands of a child who's learned patience the hard way. Tommy. His voice was different, smaller. The confidence that had always been his armor sounded dented. Hello, David. A pause. In that silence, I could hear 5 years of assumptions crumbling. We need to talk. In person. Can you meet me somewhere? I'm already somewhere, I said, looking around the coffee shop where this had all started. 5th Street Coffee. Same booth where you told me I was the dumb one. Another pause, longer this time. You know, don't you? About Techdyne, about everything. I know a lot of things, David. Which particular thing are you worried about? I could hear him swallow hard. I'm coming over. Don't leave. The line went dead. I ordered another coffee and settled in to wait. The barista with the philosophy degree asked if I was expecting someone. My brother, I said. He's been lost for a while, but I think he's finally ready to ask for directions. 20 minutes later, David walked through the door. 5 years of success had changed him in ways that weren't entirely positive. His suit was more expensive, his watch flashier, his hairline higher, but it was his eyes that told the real story. They darted around the coffee shop like he was looking for exits, for escape routes, for anywhere to look except directly at me. He ordered black coffee, no cream, no sugar. I remembered when he used to get frappuccinos with extra whipped cream. Success had even stolen his sweet tooth. He slid into the booth across from me, and for a moment we were kids again. Two brothers who'd shared bunk beds and baseball cards, and the kind of easy cruelty that only family can deliver with precision. Tommy, he started, then stopped. Started again? I owe you an explanation. Do you? He blinked, clearly expecting more anger, more demands. Instead, I sipped my coffee and waited. The business, Techdyne. I took your idea. I know. I never meant for it to get this big. At first, I was just going to build a simple version, maybe make a few $1,000s and drop it. But the investors loved it, and the funding came through, and suddenly everyone was calling me a visionary. Congratulations. He looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. You're not angry? I considered the question seriously. Was I angry? 5 years ago, absolutely. Rage had kept me awake for months, had made me question everything I thought I knew about family and fairness and the basic rules of human decency. But anger, I'd learned, was like coffee left too long on the burner. Eventually, it just turned bitter and useless. I was angry, I said. For a long time, but anger is expensive. It costs energy I didn't want to spend. David leaned forward, encouraged by what he mistook for forgiveness. The thing is, Tommy, I'm in trouble. Real trouble. The company's bleeding money. Our retention rates are terrible, customers are canceling left and right, and the investors are asking hard questions I don't have good answers for. I nodded sympathetically. That sounds difficult. But you've built something that actually works. I've been researching, and your clients love you. Your software is everything mine was supposed to be. Different approaches, I said mildly. I want to make this right, he continued, his words coming faster now, desperation leaking through the cracks in his composure. I want to buy your software, merge it with Techdyne. We could be partners. Real partners this time. I set down my coffee cup with deliberate care. What makes you think it's for sale? Everything's for sale at the right price. I can offer you $5 million, cash, plus a percentage of the combined company. You'd be rich, Tommy, really rich. $5 million. 5 years ago, that would have sounded like all the money in the world. Even now, it represented more financial security than I'd ever imagined. But there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich is having money. Wealthy is having something money can't buy. That's a generous offer, I said. David's face lit up with the kind of relief that comes from believing you've solved an impossible problem with the simplest solution. So you'll do it? You'll sell? No. No? He repeated, as if the word didn't make sense in English. Number, I'm not selling Restaurant Heart. Not to you, not to anyone. But $5 million, Tommy. That's life-changing money. My life has already changed, I said. I love what I do. My clients trust me. I solve problems for people who need solving. Why would I want to change that? David stared at me like I was speaking in code. Because it's business. Because it's smart. Because it's $5 million. David, I said gently, you've always been the smart one in the family. At least that's what everyone always said. Top grades, business school, great job, perfect career trajectory. But there's something you never learned. What? The difference between being clever and being wise? I could see him trying to process this, trying to find the angle, the leverage point that would make me see reason as he defined it. If you won't sell, he said finally, then let me buy in. Make me a partner. I'll bring the corporate experience, the investor relationships, the scale. David, stop! Something in my tone made him close his mouth. 5 years ago, you told me I was the dumb one. You laughed at my idea. You said I'd get crushed by the competition. Do you remember? He had the grace to look ashamed. I was wrong. I was an ass. I admit it. You weren't just wrong about the business model, I continued. You were wrong about what success looks like. You built a company worth $42 million, dollars, and it's failing because it doesn't solve the problems it claims to solve. I built something worth a fraction of that, and it's succeeding because it does something your company can't do. Which is, it cares. The word hung in the air between us, simple and complete. Your software is brilliant, I went on. It's sophisticated and elegant and impressive, but it treats restaurants like equations to be solved instead of relationships to be nurtured. It optimizes everything except the thing that matters most, the connection between people who make food and people who need it. David opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. For the first time in our conversation, he looked like he was actually listening. Restaurant Heart isn't just software, I said. It's a philosophy. It's the idea that technology should amplify human connection, not replace it. It learns what Mrs. Chen's regulars order, not because that data drives profit margins, but because remembering makes people feel valued. It tracks customer preferences not to manipulate buying behavior, but to help restaurant owners take better care of the people who trust them with their appetites and their time. I leaned back in the booth, feeling the weight of 5 years of careful thought settling into words I'd never spoken aloud. You can't buy that philosophy, David. You can't merge with it or scale it or turn it into something that impresses investors, because the moment you try to make it bigger than it is, you kill the thing that makes it work. David's coffee had gone cold in his hands. So what happens now? I go bankrupt? My company fails? I lose everything? I don't know, I said honestly. That depends on what you choose to do next. What do you mean? You have a choice. You can keep trying to build software that impresses people in boardrooms, or you can start building software that helps people in kitchens. You can keep chasing metrics that look good on quarterly reports, or you can start measuring success by whether your clients sleep better at night. I stood up, leaving a $10 bill on the table for 2 cups of coffee that probably cost half that. If you decide you want to learn how to build something that matters instead of something that sells, call me. Not to buy my business or partner with me, or find some angle that turns caring into profit. Call me if you want to remember why you thought restaurants were worth helping in the first place. David looked up at me with something that might have been hope or might have been desperation. And if I do call? If I want to learn? Then I'll teach you, I said. The same way Mrs. Chen taught me. The same way every restaurant owner I've worked with has taught me. You start by listening, really listening. Not to what people say they want, but to what they actually need. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and David? Next time you want to steal someone's idea, make sure you understand it first. You took my business plan, but you missed the most important part. Which was, it was never about the software, I said. It was about the heart. Outside, the afternoon sun felt warmer than it had in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen, a photo of her evening prep with a caption, Thursday, low men ready. Software says busy night coming. I smiled and typed back, trust your instincts. The computer is just there to help you remember what you already know. 3 blocks away, I knew David was still sitting in that coffee shop booth, staring at his reflection in cold coffee and trying to figure out how the dumb brother had ended up being the smart one all along. But that wasn't quite right either. I hadn't become smarter than David. I'd learned something different entirely, that intelligence without wisdom is just expensive ignorance, and that sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is simply care about the people your work is supposed to serve. My phone rang as I reached my car. The number looked familiar, a restaurant in Portland I'd been working with. Tommy, it's Jake from Riverside Bistro. The system just suggested I call Mrs. Patterson because she hasn't been in for her usual Tuesday lunch in 3 weeks. I almost ignored it, figured it was a glitch. But I called anyway. I unlocked my car door and slid into the driver's seat. And she's been in the hospital. Surgery complications. She was so touched that we noticed, she started crying. Said no one had checked on her, not even her own kids. She's coming in Friday for soup when she gets discharged. That's wonderful, Jake. The thing is, he continued, this isn't about business, is it? I mean, yeah, Mrs. Patterson will probably keep coming here for years because of this call, but that's not why the system told me to make it. Why do you think it told you? Because she's lonely, because she's scared, because sometimes the most important thing a restaurant can do is remind people they're not invisible. I started the engine and sat there for a moment, letting Jake's words settle. You're right, I said. That's exactly why. After we hung up, I sat in my car and thought about David, still sitting in that coffee shop, trying to figure out how to turn caring into a competitive advantage. The irony was perfect. He'd stolen my idea so completely that he'd missed the point entirely. Restaurant Heart wasn't successful because it was better software. It was successful because it remembered something the entire tech industry had forgotten, that the best technology disappears into the background, leaving only human connection enhanced and amplified. David's company would probably survive. He was smart enough to pivot, to find some way to incorporate what he'd learned into a business model that satisfied investors. He might even use some version of my philosophy, repackaged as human-centered design or empathy-driven solutions or whatever buzzwords would make venture capitalists feel good about caring. But it wouldn't be the same thing, because caring can't be scaled or optimized or turned into a unicorn startup without losing the essence of what makes it work. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through neighborhoods where small restaurants glowed warmly in the evening light. In each one, I imagined owners who knew their customers' names, preferences, stories. People who understood that feeding someone isn't just a transaction, it's an act of hospitality, of community, of love. That was the real difference between my software and David's. His was designed to help restaurants succeed. Mine was designed to help them remember why success mattered in the first place. At home, I opened my laptop and checked the support forum where my clients talk to each other, sharing tips and stories and small victories. Tonight, there was a thread about a regular customer who'd lost his job and how the restaurant had quietly started giving him larger portions without charging extra. Another about an elderly woman who came in every Sunday, not because the food was exceptional, but because the staff always remembered to ask about her grandchildren. These weren't business strategies or customer retention tactics. They were just people taking care of people, amplified by software that understood the difference between data and humanity. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from David. Thank you for not selling. I think I understand now why you couldn't. I typed back, understanding is the first step. Caring is the second. Everything else follows from there. He didn't respond, but I hadn't expected him to. Some lessons take time to sink in, especially when you've spent years believing that intelligence and success are the same thing. I closed the laptop and made dinner, something simple and satisfying. As I ate, I thought about tomorrow's schedule. A consultation with a bakery in Minneapolis, a training session with a food truck collective in Austin, a follow-up with a diner in Maine that had been struggling since their longtime cook retired. Each one was a story. Each one mattered. Each one was proof that sometimes the most profound revolution isn't about disrupting industries or scaling solutions. It's about remembering that technology works best when it helps people be more human, not less. The dumb brother had learned something the smart one was still figuring out. That wisdom isn't about being right. It's about being useful. And the most useful thing you can do is care about the people your work touches, especially when they can't pay you back with anything more valuable than trust. Outside, the city settled into evening rhythms. In restaurants across the country, owners were closing up, counting registers, preparing for tomorrow. And in 300 of those restaurants, software was quietly learning new things about the people who came through their doors, not to manipulate or optimize them, but to help their hosts remember that every customer is someone's grandmother, someone's neighbor, someone's friend. That was worth more than $42 million. That was worth everything. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Click on the playlist to listen to more stories like this one.